house that once hid the Petrovs is up for sale. A hidden home in Sydney's Avalon Beach, believed to have secretly housed infamous Russian spies the Petrovs, is on the market for $5.5 million, and it has a secret trapdoor. Vladmir and Evdokia Petrov caught the nation's attention when they defected from the KGB, the Soviet secret police, and sought political asylum in Australia in 1954, in what came to be known as the Petrov Affair. Vladimir and his wife Evdokia were both Soviet spies. He was a colonel, and she was a captain. They were posted to Australia in 1951 under the cover of being Russian diplomats, but were here to infiltrate the Australian government, recruit spies and to keep watch on Soviet citizens. But in 1954, Mr. Petrov, fearing having to return to the Soviet Union, contacted the Australian Security Intelligence Organization, ASIO, and offered to provide evidence of Soviet espionage in exchange for political asylum. On April 3, 1954, he defected to Australia under top-secret conditions. Not even Mrs. Petrov was aware of his deal. Once the Soviet Union heard of Mr. Petrov's defection, it accused Australian authorities of kidnapping him and sent agents to bring Mrs. Petrov back to Moscow. This sparked widespread protest in Australia as many were worried that as the wife of a communist defector, she would face execution back home. This prompted Prime Minister Robert Menzies to order her release back to the Australian government in Darwin when the plane back to Russia landed from Sydney to be refueled. On the morning of April 20, Mrs. Petrov also defected to Australia. Fearing for their lives, the Petrovs moved from safe house to safe house in Sydney before being given new identities in Melbourne. One of these safe houses, according to selling agent Steve Fitzmaurice of Fitzmaurice Property Group Avalon, is 137 George Street, Avalon Beach. Having lived in Avalon his entire life, Mr. Fitzmaurice grew up hearing rumors of the 5-bedroom home being one of these top-secret hideouts. So earlier this year, he decided to find out. After speaking with ASIO, the Museum of Democracy in Canberra, the National Archives and the Avalon Historical Society, Mr. Fitzmaurice discovered there were 4 Petrov safe houses. They were in Avalon Beach, Towlers Bay on Pittwater, Barry's Bay in North Sydney and Palm Beach. The safe houses were compulsory acquisitions and the government only held them for 18 months, he told news.com.au. So the big giveaway for 137 George Street was the contract of sale. We thought if it was a compulsory acquisition it must have been bought in 1954 and sold in 1954, and sure enough, in the contract for sale, that is exactly what happened. The other clue came from an aerial photograph he received from the Avalon Historical Society. The president of the Avalon Historical Society has an aerial photograph of 1955, Mr. Fitzmaurice said. A lot of articles came out of the National Archives, which named the street that the safe houses were in, and they had said there was a safe house in George Street, they just hadn't put numbers on it. But when you look at the aerial shot at the end of George Street in Carrier Bay, there is only one house there, so it became fairly obvious. The final regular piece of evidence that makes Mr. Fitzmaurice certain number 137 is a home for the history books is the secret trapdoor, which is hidden under built-in seating. It also has that very strange trapdoor. That is a room, quite a big room, which has no other access and no windows, and the only way to get to it is through that library seat which you lift up, open the trapdoor and there is a ladder down there, Mr. Fitzmaurice told news.com.au. It is a fair assumption that if the KGB turned up, they would have shoved the Petrovs down that hole. The home has attracted strong interest from local buyers as a weekender, and Mr. Fitzmaurice is confident it will sell within its price guide soon. It was last sold in February 1994 for $850,000.